Guys are pretty good, I guess, at solving a two-step equation, which is awesome. So what I wanted to do is give you an equation that's also a two-step equation, but it also has a fraction here as a coefficient. So let's see two ways that we can do that. The first way is just to do it the regular way you would do it. We know we want to isolate this variable. So first we're going to look on this side of our equation and see if there's anything there we don't want on that side of the equation. So I can see that I don't want this 8 here. I'm going to take away 8 from both sides. 8 take away 8 is 0, so that cancels out. So I have 1/4 x on this side. 12 take away 8 is 4. So now I know I have a 1/4 times x. I want to get rid of that. How do I undo 1/4 times x? I'm going to divide both sides by 1/4. This is where it can get a little hairy, so I'm going to change my colors there. I'm going to divide both sides by 1/4. 1/4 divided by 1/4 cancels out. I know I have x equals whatever 4 divided by 1/4 is. And a really good way to do this is write out what this says in your brain the long way, the horizontal way. So if this says 4 divided by 1/4, I'm going to write it out like this because it helps me visualize it better. 4 divided by 1/4. Remember, we can put any whole number over 1. So I know that 4 divided by 1/4, you never divide by a fraction. What do? Right, you multiply by the reciprocal. So we're going to flip that 1/4 upside down, and we have 4 times a reciprocal. 1/4 as a reciprocal is 4 over 1. Now we multiply across, and we get 16. 4 times 4 is 16, so I know that x equals 16. So in this version, you have to remember that when you have a fraction times a variable, to do inverse operations or undo it, you have to divide both sides by that fraction. If you write it out the long way, that makes it a little bit easier to see what you have to do. You never divide by a fraction, you multiply by the reciprocal. So here's another way that you might be able to do this, and this is something that you may have never seen before. In fact, you probably have never seen this before. But it's really saved me a lot of time and frustration in algebra, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of that denominator. So I don't want this denominator to be there anymore. So I am going to just make it disappear. Watch how you make a denominator disappear. I am going to multiply every term in this equation by that denominator. So watch this. I'm going to multiply the 8 times that denominator 4. I'm going to multiply this 1/4 times 4, and I'm going to multiply this 12 times 4. So watch what happens. 4 times 8 is 32. 4 times 1/4, let me write that out so you can see it. 4 times 1/4 gives me 4 times 1 is 4. 1 times 4 is 4. It gives me 1. So I can cross that out. And now I have just x left. And then 4 times 12 is 48. Notice what happened there. I completely got rid of the fraction just by multiplying every single term by that denominator. 4 times 8 is 32. These cancel out because it becomes 1. 4 divided by 4. And then I have x left, and then 4 times 12 is 48. Now I can just proceed and complete my equation just using inverse operations. So I know I want to isolate the variable. I take away 32 from this side and from this side, and these cancel out. X equals 48, take away 32, which is 16. So I actually think this way is a lot quicker, especially when you only have one fraction in the entire mess here. So let's practice. You guys are going to be given a problem where you're just going to solve one of these either way you want. You can multiply every term by the denominator, or you can go ahead and just do it the regular way, remembering that when you do this part. When you get to this part where the variable is next to the fraction, you divide both sides by that fraction, but then you're going to multiply by the reciprocal. Okay, so here we go. I'll have you guys do this problem. 9 plus 1/2 x equals -1. Let's think about what we would do here. I'll walk you through it a little bit, okay? If you're going to multiply all the terms in here to get rid of this denominator, you're going to multiply this by 2, and this will cancel out, and you'll multiply this by 2. If you're not going to do it that way, go ahead, leave this alone for a second, take away 9 from both sides, then you're going to have to divide by 1/2, which means you're going to have to multiply by this reciprocal. Okay, so let's see how you can do. I'm going to put the solution on the next page, and you can check your work when you're done. See you later. So on this one, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take away 9 from both sides. So I have 1/2 x. Please use your calculator on these. -1 take away 9 is -10. I'm going to divide both sides by 1/2. These cancel out. I have x equals -10 divided by 1/2. So let's look what that looks like when we write it out this way. -10 divided by 1/2. We don't ever divide by a fraction. We always multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm going to flip that fraction upside down. I get -20. Okay, now let's do it this way. We're going to multiply every single term by that denominator of 2. And we're going to get rid of that 2 so that we don't have that fraction. So here's my denominator. Let's multiply every term by 2. So 2 times 9 is 18. The 2's cancel out, so I'm left with x. 2 times -1 is -2. Now I'm just going to isolate my variable by adding, well, I have 18 here. I'm going to take away 18 from both sides. A -2 take away 18 is -20. I think this way is actually a lot quicker once you get used to getting rid of that fraction. So check your answer. See, did you get x equals -20?